Every gamer has that one video game, or perhaps even a handful of games, that impacted them at the right time of their lives and stuck with them ever since. For me, one of the very first games to ever impact and imprint on me in such a way was none other than Alan Wake, developed by the Finnish game studio Remedy. Video games are not typically known for telling great stories, but there are a few exceptions to the rule, and at the time of its release, Alan Wake was the first game I ever played which proved to me that video games are in fact capable of telling phenomenal stories. I was sucked into this game, drawn towards it by its mysterious premise, and pulled in by the iron grip that was its evocative storytelling. Alan Wake very quickly left a mark on my 13-year-old self, and by the end of the story, I was hungry for more. Unfortunately, fate wasn't too kind to Alan Wake, and for a long time, we were all left on a cliffhanger with no hopes of a sequel due to circumstances outside of Remedy's control. However, hope wouldn't be lost for too long. 1 year after the release of another Remedy game in 2019, named Control, an expansion for that game came out titled AWE, which revealed that Control was in fact set in the same universe as Alan Wake, featuring the return of the titular character for the first time in a decade. Then, in 2021, Remedy released a remastered version of the original Alan Wake game, which further built hope, before finally, later on that year, during the December Game Awards, we got a trailer for none other than Alan Wake 2. Now we're in the year 2023, the long-awaited sequel is about to come out very soon, and I am beyond excited to finally witness a continuation of this story that I love so much. In this video, I would like to share my fondness for Alan Wake in anticipation for the sequel, discuss all of the reasons why I appreciate it as much as I do, and of course, explore what will come next. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the world of Alan Wake. Also, I will be diving into spoilers, so here's your warning. Alan Wake is a psychological thriller inspired by the works of Stephen King and David Lynch. In the case of David Lynch, Alan Wake draws heavily from his series Twin Peaks. The game was announced in the year 2005 and eventually released in 2010, exclusive to the Xbox 360. However, it wouldn't be exclusive for long, as it was eventually ported to PC and the remastered version got releases on both PlayStation and Nintendo hardware. Alan Wake is originally intended to be an open-world survival game with a day and night cycle, where by day you would acquire resources in order to survive, but by night you would be forced to fight against shadowy monsters known only as the Taken. However, the development team struggled to marry the gameplay with the action thriller story they wanted to tell, so they agreed to rework the game into a more linear episodic structure, much like a TV show. However, traces of the game's original concept still remain. For example, the open world still exists all around you, and you can use mods to enable the free camera in order to go exploring. I've never done this myself, but I've watched a few YouTube videos of other people doing this, and it's genuinely really cool. Moving on, the story of Alan Wake is set in a fictional town named Bright Falls, which is set in the Pacific Northwest. The protagonist, Alan, is a famous author living in New York City, known for writing a series of gritty crime novels about a detective named Alex Casey. However, for the past 2 years, Alan Wake has been suffering from a severe case of writer's block and is incapable of writing a new book. His mental state deteriorates as he struggles with this dilemma, and the fact that both fans and the media keep pressuring him to release something new doesn't help matters either. So his wife, Alice, takes him on a vacation to Bright Falls, where they stay at a cabin built in the middle of Cauldron Lake. Unfortunately, the following night, things take a turn for the worse. Alan overhears Alice crying for help, and when he goes to investigate, he witnesses her being pulled into the lake by a mysterious entity. He dives into the lake to rescue her, only to black out and immediately wake up in a crashed car 1 week later, with no memory of what happened in between the events of his wife's disappearance and now. Stranded in the middle of a forest with no idea as to how he got there, Alan explores, only to stumble across pages from a horror manuscript he wrote titled Departure. However, Alan has no memory of ever writing this book, and as he continues to explore this forest, he eventually comes to the dreadful realization that his book is coming to life, and that the shadowy monsters he wrote about in his story, named the Taken, are trying to kill him. With that, Alan embarks on a journey where he must uncover the mystery as to why his book is coming to life, why this dark presence is infecting the residents of Bright Falls, and ultimately find out what happened to his missing wife, using the pages of his manuscript to guide him along his journey as they predict all of the events unfolding within the town, one by one. The story of Alan Wake is both the game's best strength and its biggest selling point. It is formatted like a TV show, with each section of the game split up into multiple episodes. There are 6 episodes in total: Nightmare, Taken, Ransom, The Truth, The Clicker, and Departure. There are also 2 special episodes available to download as DLC, named The Signal and The Writer. The first few episodes are pretty much what I just described. As you progress throughout the game, delving deeper into the mystery with every episode, Alan discovers that a malevolent, supernatural force known as the Dark Presence is inhabiting the town of Bright Falls. More specifically, it is trapped within Cauldron Lake itself. The Presence is responsible for turning the normal, ordinary residents of Bright Falls into the monsters known as the Taken, and it's determined to take over the world. Eventually, Alan regains his memory, coming to the realization that the Dark Presence was responsible for Alice's disappearance, holding her captive within a surreal alternate dimension known only as the Dark Place, a gateway to which is located at the bottom of Cauldron Lake. As it turns out, Cauldron Lake has the power to turn works of art into reality, whether that may be through music, poetry, storytelling, etc. The Dark Presence has coerced and manipulated Adam into writing the manuscript for Departure, using both his writing skills and the powers of Cauldron Lake in order to create a story about the Presence escaping the Dark Place, so that it can finally emerge into reality and take over the world. The Dark Presence can't write the story by itself, it requires a human to act as its proxy, because only humans have the ability to use Cauldron Lake's powers. Alan eventually realizes the Dark Place's deception, changing the story of Departure at the last minute, by not only writing himself in as the protagonist, but also writing his escape from the cabin. However, during his escape he accidentally crashed his car, the impact of which was what caused him to lose his memory in the first place. At the end of the story, Alan returns to Cauldron Lake, diving into the waters in order to reach the Dark Place. Within the Dark Place, he is able to write a bittersweet ending to Departure where he defeats the Dark Presence, stops it from spreading, and helps Alice escape the Dark Place. But in exchange for her freedom, he must take her place, and now he has become trapped within the Dark Place indefinitely. The reason for this is a little tricky to explain, but basically, there are rules when it comes to writing a story using the powers of Cauldron Lake. Basically, you must adhere to the rules of whatever genre you're writing in, and in the case of Alan, he was writing a dark and bleak horror story. Therefore, Alan must follow the rules and narrative conventions of the horror genre, and stay consistent with the tone that has already been established. The story can't be all sunshine and rainbows. There has to be stakes, there has to be real, genuine danger. You can't just simply write, and then everybody survived and lived happily ever after, the end. Because if Departure were an actual novel, then an ending like that wouldn't make it past the reader's suspension of disbelief. The story must follow a logical sequence of events, and it must remain within the dark, bleak tone that's already been established, otherwise Alan's writings won't come to life. In order to complete the manuscript for Departure and ensure his wife's escape, Alan can't write a happy ending where they both escape and live happily ever after. Instead, it's more believable and tonally consistent for Departure to end on a more bittersweet note, where Alan trades places with Alice and she gets to escape while he remains trapped. The DLC episodes take place after the main story, chronicling Alan's battles within the Dark Place, ending on a cliffhanger. Alan plans to use the powers of the Dark Place in order to write a new story, one where he escapes and returns to the real world. Fast forward to Alan Wake 2, where he has been stuck in the Dark Place for over 10 years, with multiple failed escape attempts under his belt. The sequel will continue to chronicle his journey, trying to escape the dark place through his writing while facing off against a mysterious, evil doppelganger of himself known only as Mr. Scratch. Meanwhile, a new character, FBI agent Saga Anderson, gets tangled within the events of the new story Alan is writing in order to escape. And let me tell you right now, I have no idea where the story for the sequel is going to go, but without a doubt, I am hella excited to finally experience the continuation of one of my favorite stories in all of gaming. The summary I've provided for the original game story is abbreviated. There is so much going on within the game's narrative that I didn't cover because I wanted to summarize the story as briefly as possible. But now that you have a general idea of what the game is about, let's move on and discuss the rest of my thoughts regarding Alan Wake. I think part of the reason why this game appeals to me so much, besides the fantastic storytelling, is because I am a writer as well. I've written 5 unpublished novels, and as of the making of this video, I'm in the middle of writing my 6th novel, which is coincidentally also a horror, trying to get my 4th novel self-published, and also trying to find a literary agent or publisher for my 5th novel. I've also written some short stories, and I've created an audiobook based off one of them, all available for free, links to which can be found in the pinned comment and description of this video if you're curious. But anyway, shameless plug aside, I feel like as a result of my passion for writing, I can relate to Alan quite easily and empathise with his struggles, such as writer's block. Plus, from a novelist's perspective, the concept of being able to will almost anything into existence through writing is a really intriguing concept, and I've often found myself wondering what I would do if I was in Alan's shoes. How would I write my way out of the mess he's found himself in? What kind of ending would I personally write to Departure in order to achieve the best possible outcome? Another thing I'm fond of when it comes to Alan Wake is the soundtrack, composed by Petri Alanko, who was also the composer for the spin-off Alan Wake's American Nightmare, the game Control, and is also going to be the composer for the upcoming Alan Wake 2. I had the limited collector's edition for the original Alan Wake, which included a copy of the soundtrack, and I really loved listening to it. I even used some of the songs from the soundtrack as background music in some of my machinima-style YouTube videos I used to make back when I was a kid, from around 2007 and 2012. That's right, Orm Revenant isn't my first YouTube channel. Back when I was growing up, some of my friends and I made short films and a 3-season web series within an MMO we used to play. I started the channel around roughly 2007, maybe 2006, and then I stopped making videos on that channel in 2012. And before you ask, I set all of those videos to private on my old channel, so they're not available to watch anymore. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Moving on, another aspect of the game's soundtrack I love are the original songs, created by Finnish alternative rock band Poets of the Fall. Poets of the Fall have worked on a ton of Remedy games. I was introduced to the band through Alan Wake and the Max Payne games, and honestly, Poets of the Fall is definitely one of my all-time favourite bands. I absolutely love their music. Some of my favourite songs by the band are Carnival of Rust, Late Goodbye, which was featured in Max Payne, Cradled in Love, and Children of the Sun. Poets of the Fall created an original song for Alan Wake named War. Besides that song, they also created a couple other songs for a fictional band that exists within the Alan Wake universe named Old Gods of Asgard. These songs are titled Children of the Older God and The Poet and the Muse. The Poet and the Muse is probably my favourite song that was created for Alan Wake, although Children of the Elder God is definitely pretty cool too. One of the things I'm looking forward to the most when it comes to Alan Wake 2 is definitely the soundtrack. I have no doubt that Poets of the Fall will return to create original music for this new game, as they have with most other Remedy games, and I am very excited to discover whatever new songs are featured in this game from the band. Another aspect of Alan Wake I really enjoy is the atmosphere. Bright Falls may seem like a cozy, rural town during the day, but at night it comes across as so much more eerie, malevolent, and tense, especially when it comes to the dense, shadowy forests that you often find yourself in. It feels like such a relief every time you find a pool of light and are able to take a break from the surrounding, oppressing darkness, save your game, and take a moment to breathe, before diving back into all of the chaos this game throws at you. The Taken are super eerie too and add to this creepy atmosphere, coming across as very uncanny, familiar, yet alien. For example, the Taken are able to speak and say random lines upon attacking you. The reason why Taken are able to speak is because their words are an echo of their former being that's still left within their body. Even though the people that the Taken used to be have been extinguished, there are still remnants of that former person inside of them that come out through random babbling dialogue. The dialogue you hear from the Taken hint towards what sort of life each individual Taken has led, who they were, their occupations, etc., which comes across as really unsettling because it reminds you that the Taken aren't just random monsters, they used to be ordinary people just like you and me. Although at the same time, some of their incoherent, chaotic dialogue can come across as super funny. Sure, most of it is meant to be creepy, but occasionally some of the dialogue is written just to make you laugh. Anyway, the final aspect of Alan Wake that I like so much is the cinematic presentation, which further enhances the fantastic storytelling. This game makes you feel like you're the main character in a really good immersive TV show, which a lot of games throughout the past decade have also done, but in the case for Alan Wake, it felt very unique for its time because it was one of the first games to ever attempt this. Just like real TV shows, each level, or should I say episode in this game, starts out with its own title and a previously on segment. The narrative pacing of each episode is also similar to a TV show where, within short individual time frames, they focus on delivering small bursts of mystery, character development, and action. Each episode ends on a cliffhanger too, incentivizing you to play the next episode just to find out what happens next, and each episode also ends by playing a licensed song. Much like how real TV shows sometimes have music playing during the end credits of some of their episodes. The game doesn't just mimic a TV show, the game's storytelling is also reminiscent of a novel, where throughout the game you hear Alan Wake's internal thoughts as he commentates on everything happening throughout the game. All of this narration written in the style of a book written within first-person perspective. This works surprisingly well, helping you get within Alan's head and understand his thoughts and feelings more than you would normally be able to. Alan Wake feels pretty unique, drawing from all of these various storytelling mediums and placing them within a video game. There weren't any other games like it at the time, and even though there have been more games like this since, there still haven't been many. This aspect of Alan Wake definitely helps set it apart from most other action horror games. In conclusion, Alan Wake is a game with a compelling story which explores a lot of very unique and interesting concepts. It's a game I look back on fondly and take a lot of inspiration from to this very day when it comes to my own creative work. Alan Wake 2 is going to be releasing very soon, and as I've mentioned before, I am hella hyped for it, especially with the fact that this time around, they're leaning more into survival horror instead of action horror. I've been waiting a long time to finally see the continuation of this story that left such an impact on me way back when, and the release date can't come soon enough. I don't know if I will make another video on Alan Wake 2 once the game comes out, but if there's one thing I do know, it's just that I had to make a video on the first game before the release of the sequel, express my love for the series, and get all of my thoughts and feelings out of my system. But what do you think? Have you played the original Alan Wake? What are your thoughts on it? And are you looking forward to seeing the sequel just as much as I am? Whatever your thoughts are, feel free to leave a comment below, and I will see you all again in my next video.